As you can see, I'm in my new look era. I quite like this thing. I think it suits my image, and it suits my vibe. Sort of kidcore adjacent, antique vibes. It also is large enough that I can actually wear my glasses inside of it, so I can actually, well, kind of see. Oops. Anyways, without any further drama, the subject of today's video is red flags that you need to look out for when it comes to spiritual teachers and mentors. This video is going to end up being focused more so on like YouTubers, influencers, authors, more famous spiritual teachers that you don't necessarily have so much of a personal relationship with. This is more your parasocial mentors and teachers. In a different video, I'll go over red flags to look out for when it comes to more personal mentors that you interact more one-on-one with. It's dangerous out there, kids. You've got to be really careful. Oh God. That's not very ladylike. First red flag I'm going to go over that you should really consider avoiding a spiritual teacher if they exhibit this is if they push their system, their teachings, their modality as a sort of fix-all. A fix-all that'll work for anyone under any circumstances, and if they assert that it's all that the practitioner needs. This is absolutely someone who's trying to sell you something if they do this. Every single individual practitioner is unique and is going to have different needs and for different materials and different techniques, and there's absolutely no one-size-fits-all. There's no technique that works for everyone in every situation, and this isn't just for spirituality. This also applies to more traditional healthcare and psychiatric stuff. There's different types of therapy. There's talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure therapy, all these different modalities because different people have different needs, and the same applies to spirituality. Now, kind of segueing off of this, if a spiritual teacher seems to be really against, like, traditional health care, that's a huge red flag. Spirituality can be a great part of your healing and of your journey, but it is not a substitute for traditional health care, physiological or mental. I get it, the medical health care system is deeply corrupt. There is a lot wrong with it, but thoughts and prayers, meditation, and shadow work and witchcraft just straight up can't address everything. If you need your meds, you need your meds, and you should take them. They won't make you less spiritual. They won't cut you off from your guides. That's fiction. That's not how that works. This also segues nicely into the next point, because of anti-vaxxers. If a teacher seems very conspiracy focused in their teachings and what they say, if they really seem to buy into and promote conspiracy theories, seismically massive red flag. Honestly, I don't really even think theory is the proper term for it, because scientifically speaking, a theory is an idea that has gained a huge amount of scientific backing and has the general support of the scientific community. It's not just an idea that someone proposes. Really, that would be closer to a hypothesis, but even that, most of these conspiracy theories are too flimsy to even be hypotheses. And there's a fine line here. Conspiracy theories can be a lot of fun if you're talking about ancient aliens, Area 51, that kind of stuff. But when people take this really seriously and it starts informing their life decisions and the moral decisions they make, you very quickly spiral into some very deranged territory. And piggybacking off of what I was talking about with healthcare, this is like going to be your anti-vaxxers. A lot of spiritual people are anti-vax, which just no. Get your vaccines, get your kids vaccinated. This isn't a joke. Vaccines work. Herd immunization calls off diseases. And refusing vaccines is bringing back really messed up and dangerous diseases, and we don't mess with that. Over here at Twinkleplasm, we absolutely do not mess with that. Another one is anti-Semitism. Hey, this is Editing Twinkle. I want to just hop on to address a couple of things because I feel like this section of the video is a little messy. The reason I'm addressing anti-Semitism in the conspiracy theory section of the video is because there are a lot of extremely anti-Semitic conspiracy theories floating around about the Jewish cabals secretly pulling the strings and running everything from behind the scenes. That's just ridiculous. You are not suffering because of a particular ethnicity of people. You are suffering because of the wealthiest 1 or 2% of people in the world hoarding resources. There's a point in this video at which I incorrectly say that Judaism is also an ethnicity. It's not. Judaism is a religion, but there is also a culturally and genetically distinct Jewish ethnicity. And this is why anti-Semitism goes so far beyond just disliking religion. Anyway, back to the video. Anti-Semitism is big in a lot of spiritual communities, which I think is like really messed up because, you know, as spiritual practitioners, as witches, occultists, magicians, sorcerers, we live kind of an alternative lifestyle, and we tend to face ostracization for that. And you'd think that we would have the empathy and self-awareness to sort of stand as allies and as siblings with other marginalized communities, but unfortunately that doesn't seem to be the case. Now, as we know, as I've not been shy about mentioning in the past, I have my own whole laundry list of issues with Abrahamic religion and with the Abrahamic God, but and the influence that all of that whole system has had on the world at large. But Judaism isn't just a religion, it's also an ethnicity, and like, it doesn't matter how much you have against a particular practice or belief system, it's never a free license to be racist. Don't be a racist piece of debris. Don't be a racist piece of excrement, okay? Personally, I don't think it's really that hard. In fact, I'd wager it's one of those things that's really not that hard unless you're not that smart. But people are out here really struggling with it, especially within the theistic Satanism, left-hand path sort of side of the occult community, which is where I reside. You see a lot of this. I'm not going to be naming any names, but a lot of prominent theistic Satanists and theistic Satanist organizations are extremely anti-Semitic. It's gross, it's racist, it's abhorrent, and it's a lot of nonsense, to be quite frank. The next red flag is if a huge portion of the spiritual teacher's ideals is pushing what you cannot do. I think that's a red flag. Now, there are safeguards, gatekeeping, and rules in place because these things keep us safe, and like, cultural appropriation is a real legitimate issue. Like, if you are like positing yourself as an expert and profiting off of the spiritual work and knowledge of a community of which you are not a part, especially if those systems are closed practices, that's not cool. You shouldn't be doing that. But at the same time, I think when people get like really obsessed with this idea of cultural appropriation to the point that they're kind of making huge amount of their teachings around just telling people what they can't do, it gets to be a little bit neurotic. I think it gets to be a little detached from reality. So like, basically, if people aren't hurting anyone, if they aren't hurting anyone, you've got to let people like what they like. You've got to let people express themselves how they want to. And while there are dangers in the occult and there are things you shouldn't do, I think that the bulk of a teacher's work should be about inspiring and enabling and empowering students to feel and letting them know what they can do. It should be about encouraging, pushing our community forward. And like at a certain point, it gets to be very like we're being lectured, and very few people are genuinely receptive to that kind of treatment. Ah, yes. The next red flag, very strict and rigid dogma. There's a very particular belief system this person subscribes to, and they sort of posit it as though everyone's practice somehow has to fit within this system. Absolutely seismic, gargantuan, mega, ultra, giga red flag. This is particularly common in the more Christian-y and Christian-adjacent witches, but you see it all over. You also see this big time within communities that love to talk about the divine masculine and divine feminine. Like these are gender roles and stereotypes that absolutely not every person is going to fit into and abide by. There are drastically different occult frameworks from all around the world, and even heavily customized personal practices that are going to heavily break any particular rigid dogma you try to set out. And a good spiritual framework should be highly malleable. It should be customized to the individual practitioner's needs, and asserting absolutely rigid dogma, like, if you have to follow this particular pantheon, or you have to make yourself either divine masculine or divine feminine, it's a great recipe for neurosis and spiritual psychosis. Oh no, my notes fell asleep. Ooh, this is my favorite one. A lot of spiritual teachers still have this worldview that is heavily colonized by Christianity and Christian ideals, and there's a lot of sense of shame and like purging and purifying. And I'm going to say it, if a teacher's spiritual teachings do not revolve first and foremost around self-love and self-empowerment, mega red flag. Now, this may just be my left-hand path sensibilities, but I think the ultimate role of spirituality needs to be to improve the practitioner's physical day-to-day life in some material, tangible way. And the best way to do that I think these tools have the most sway over, is developing a powerful core center of self-love. And if a teacher is going around throwing around shame and giving you reasons that you should be ashamed of yourself, then you gotta suplex that chudmo into the waste bin, fam. That was rather impassioned. Next up, too much love and light. Source loves you. God loves you. The universe loves you. Your mission as a light worker is to come down to this earth to embody love and light and show everyone the way. No, not all of us are love and light. Some of us are angry and hexy. Some of us are writhing serpents. Some of us are wrathful. And that's valid. That's a valid form of practice. The whole love and light community, not only is it just not at all reflective of the internal human condition or of the external world we reside in. I mean, come on. Like, look around. The idea that this world could possibly be the creation of a supreme being who fully encompasses just pure love and light, I think is completely certifiably insane. It is outright impossible to rectify that with the material world that we reside in, with the war, the violence, the famine, the poverty, and with certain geopolitical situations that are at play on the board at time, but I won't comment any further on that. When they preach love and light, you've just got to increase your personal vibration of light to attract all that you want into your existence. No negative emotions, no bad vibes. That's incredibly toxic, and it very quickly spirals into victim blaming territory where, oh, your manifestations haven't come through. Well, obviously you haven't positive focused hard enough, and I've been through this. It's ridiculous. It's breeding grounds for neurosis. It is breeding grounds for spiritual psychosis. And you'll hear me say that a lot because I think that one of the biggest things I'm on this platform to fight against is delusion and spiritual psychosis. The next red flag is, oh my sweet heavens, oh my sweet heck. If a creator throws around a lot of New Age jargon, seismic red flag, buddy, you gotta get away from that. Oh, that was loud. Stuff like if they talk about being a light worker or a star seed, or if they're constantly whinging on about ascension. And, oh yes, indigos is another one, and where it becomes very atomized. It's about these individual little identities. Are you a light worker? Are you a starseed? Are you an indigo child? Are you a crystal child? What starseed collective do you belong to? It's very neurotic. It's when I first got into spirituality, I initially started out on the New Age path, and ultimately, if that's what works for you, I don't want to shame it, but like, you have to be careful there, because a lot of the teachings, modalities, and practices common within the New Age field are appropriated from other cultures from all around the world. They are grievously simplified, poorly understood, and sometimes just outright appropriated. It's not very cool. As I've said before, you shouldn't continually bark and whinge on at people about what they can and can't do, especially if it's on the basis of their cultural or ethnic background. But there are valid applications of the accusation of cultural appropriation, and one of the big problems with it is that when these spiritual teachings and concepts are taken out of their cultural framework, they're not adequately explained and taught to newcomers. You're just skimming the surface and giving us essentially the Sparks Notes version of chakra system, Buddhist concepts, Taoism, and it's not really deep enough info or a thorough enough understanding to really practice these paths in any kind of meaningful sense. Next up, if a teacher just seems really profoundly mentally unwell, big red flag, because spirituality, once again, should be aiding in the mental health of the practitioner. So if someone just seems totally off kilter, totally off balance, there's a good chance that their practice either isn't really working right or is even actively doing harm to them, which you absolutely have to look out for that. If their practice is hurting them, then their practice is probably going to hurt you too if you follow it. I think this is deceptively common. Spiritual psychosis and delusion are huge problems that run rampant across the entirety of the occult community at large. Oops. All right. I removed my glasses because the mask was pressing them into my nose, and it was really uncomfortable, so I can't see quite as well now, but I should be able to finish this. Spiritual practices should aid the mental health of the practitioner, so if a teacher seems really off-kilter, poorly balanced, mentally unwell, that's a red flag. And I mean, it's okay if they have mental illnesses. We all have things that we struggle with, but if they just seem totally consumed by it, that should give you second thoughts. And I'm trying to be careful, and I'm trying to tread lightly on this one because I don't want to risk coming across as ableist. But if you're in a compromised state of mind or a compromised place relative to your mental health, and I don't think it's a huge reach to say that you're probably not the most well-qualified person to try to assist other people with their mental health, which, once again, spirituality ultimately should be for the benefit of the practitioner above all else. The final red flag I want to touch on, and this one is liable to be controversial, but if they don't seem to have manifested any kind of tangible change in their life, that's a red flag. And I once again want to be sensitive about this. Poverty is real. Poor life circumstances are real, and it's really not as simple as just manifest your way out of it. The world doesn't really work that way. But if you haven't manifested any kind of shifts at all, you haven't improved your mental health, you haven't improved your relationships, your whole life is still just a chaos storm, then you probably haven't really advanced all that far along your path, and you probably really need to put some more time into that foundation before you go trying to teach other people. And I'm aware that I'm definitely guilty of this to a certain extent. I'm mentally ill, living with my parents, physically disabled, and not wealthy. But at the very least, I've healed a lot of my family trauma, and I've mostly made peace with my parents at this point. I've manifested supportive and loving relationships into my life. I've improved my own self-love. And, it's at least something. And, I don't consider myself a spiritual teacher. I don't think you should look up to me as a mentor, at least not yet. I'm just a clueless, eepling little dragon stuck in a human flesh vessel in this crazy heck game that we call life on Earth. Honestly, on account of that, when it comes to being human, when it comes to being a person, there's a pretty good chance you know more about it than I do. And that's just my list of red flags that I think you want to look out for. There's definitely some malleability here. If there are little indicators of one or two of these, it's not necessarily a deal breaker, but if you're seeing multiple of these signs and they're coming through strong, you probably want to seriously reconsider how much of this particular spiritual leader's Kool-Aid you are drinking. Anyways, I'm gonna peel this crazy thing off and get back to my day-to-day life. Yeah, Transformers. Transformers are cool. So, Grimlock says, have a nice day.